Hello, Janice.
Hello, Anthony.
Today we'll try to answer what information are heirs entitled to, and how often is actually also important. So there's a delicate balance for executors who must, you do have a duty to keep your heirs in the loop to a certain extent, but you really can't drain your time or the estate resources by constantly responding to inquiries. So you got to sort of figure out how to make that balance work. And today we'll try to give some guidelines for that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So first, let's talk about executor versus beneficiary rights. So why is it so important to balance these two? So again, as I just mentioned, if the heirs demand too much, constant, weekly, sometimes even like every couple of day updates, which we've experienced.
Yep.
So an executor who's probably, especially if it's a non-professional executor, if it's a friend or family member, they're probably already overwhelmed and maybe like kind of redlining it already in terms of their family life, their work life, and doing this stuff, the probate stuff. So you might be pushing them into the zone of where they're going to start making errors or poor decisions on behalf of the estate because they're just growing weary of just overtaxed. Yep.
And you're growing frustration, right? Because you're just adding in all these calls on top of it.
And on top of that, from a more emotional or personal level, they might just slowly begin to resent the you or whoever named them as executor,
right?
and your legacy for putting them through this and putting them in this spot. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, on the flip side, if you're the executor, and you stonewall your heirs, or not even stonewall, just don't respond or don't have the authority to let them know this is the pace at which I'm going to respond to you, and the heirs feel ignored or that they're entitled to more information and they're not getting it,
way out of the loop.
Then the heirs may resent the decedent for their choice of executor. Like, oh, why did you put me at the mercy of this guy or this lady? And also, they may pointlessly sue or nitpick the accounting at the end because that's their chance to, which we'll talk about, that's their chance to like go after the executor, just because they feel slighted from prior, quote unquote, unresponded emails, right?
Not responding to the 3,000 emails, right? That come every day at 3:00.
Yeah. So, the best way to deal with that is, or how to strike that balance is to talk about what are the actual legal requirements, which we'll get into now. Yeah.
Yes.
So first, the main and kind of really the only legal requirement from the executor is the accounting. This is the big obligation, and we talk about it in episode 294, how to close a probate estate. This comes at the end of the estate when everything is done. It's all the books and records. It's every transaction, every dollar in, every dollar out, everything that's happened during the executor's tenure. And the executor is presenting this to the heirs, possibly creditors, and to the court and saying, this is what I did. Every dollar, let me know. Do you have a problem with any of this? And that's when heirs will voice if they have a problem or not.
Yes.
So if you're wondering why is that only done at the end, well, New York generally has a very hands-off approach. I like to call it give them enough rope to hang themselves, and that means the executor has tons of autonomy and authority. Other states, I understand, have the executors constantly checking in with the court and asking for permission, and giving notice to the heirs of certain things. New York's not like that. The executor pretty much has the authority to do what needs to be done theoretically for the sake of efficiency. But the flip side of that, from a very comic book point of view, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes, yeah.
The executor is super liable for everything. So any mistakes, any errors, any disagreements, the executor is personally liable for any of that.
Right. So we're going to give you all this room, but if you make a little mistake.
So again, there's no statutory legal requirement, as far as I remember at least, for constant updates to the heirs. And the only legal requirement, at least in the EPTL, is the accounting at the end.
Yes.
But that's not let's talk about the real world requirements.
Right. You don't want to just drop off.
You don't want to say, I'll talk to you in 2 years or a year.
Right. The accounting will be done in a year and a half, and we will discuss anything that, that's not going to work.
So no. So periodic updates, yes. Real world expectations, outside the statute, yes. Periodic updates are, you should do them, executors. And heirs, you legitimately may expect that. So for best practice, executors really should update heirs during the big milestones, like, oh, we successfully sold the co-op, or we successfully filed the estate tax return, or things like that. There's those big turning points.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
But at the very least, sometimes those milestones are really far apart. So at the very least, no less than every 6 months, probably even quarterly makes sense. Every 3 or what is that? 3 months. Yeah.
Like 3-4 months. Yeah.
So because if you don't do this informally, the judge will not be happy.
No.
So what happens when an heir gets frustrated? They do what's called a compel accounting, a court procedure to say, I want the executor to account. And if it's been like 2 or 3 months since the estate opened, the judge is going to say, what are you talking about? Come on, get out.
Yeah, give him a little bit of time. Hold on.
Right. And if it's been 6 months even, like we talked about in earlier episodes, you don't want to keep accounting. You're doing duplicate or triplicate work if you have the executor constantly accounting when he really should just be doing it once at the end. But if the judge is seeing that the heir has received 0 communications for 6 months, he's going to be annoyed and be like, you know what? Maybe you should account at your expense, something like that.
Yeah. Show us what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and from the executor's point of view, you definitely have reasons why you should be updating the heirs, because you want buy-in from the heirs on some of these big decisions along the way. You don't want them to find out, months after the fact, hey, I sold mom's house for this amount. Even if, so there's a difference between doing that and letting them know at least ballpark along the way, because that way there's no surprises really.
Right.
And you're not asking their permission per se, because like I said, New York is a, executor has a lot of authority, but at least you're, keeping them in the loop. And, you could, hey, if you had a problem, you should have said something when I mentioned that, right before closing. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So there's a little bit of CYA covering yourself there, as well as just setting expectations and so no surprises at the end, if that makes sense.
No, and I like what you said, setting expectations, right? Yeah. Even if you've never done this before, you could say, I will check in at big milestones or substantive information, right? Not every day or every week.
Sure.
But and if it's family, you may end up talking about it a little more often if you're sitting at the Thanksgiving table, which is super Thanksgiving table things to talk about, right? Is that so I suggest Anthony's book, How to Hire an Executor, and that'll tell you what you're getting into as the executor. And this is one of those things, the updates to the heirs.
Yeah, this could easily be a discussion about how probate works, but I consider this how to be an executor, why you might want to hire a professional, because it's one of those things that really stresses out executors, being bombarded with questions from the heirs. And a non-professional executor often doesn't know where to draw the line. Like, hey, you got to stop calling me all the time.
Right. And we don't have to deal with them at Thanksgiving dinner, do we?
Yeah.
We can set the expectations and say, and we don't have to hear everyone be upset, right?
And if the executor is a friend or family member, it does come off differently, drawing boundaries than an executor saying, hey, I'm a lawyer and in an office, and this is how often we'll update you, versus, your friend or your cousin saying, this is how often I'm going to update you.
This sounds feels different. If we're not trying to be mean about that, we're also trying to keep the cost down for the estate, right? If we have to update every heir every Friday at 2:00, it's going to cost a lot of money. And when really our job is to not create that unnecessary cost.
Great point. Excellent point.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully some potential executor found this helpful in making their decision if they're going to accept. Otherwise, keep those questions coming. Thank you, Janice, as always. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk soon next time.
Talk soon.
Bye now.